Tutankhamun kept a secret for most of his short life. Crowned at 9, dead at 18, buried in a tomb that wasn't built for him, behind a door that wouldn't be opened again for more than 3,000 years. The face on the gold mask became the most recognized human image on Earth. The boy behind that face, the small spine with its scoliosis curve, the foot that turned inward, the hand that held a walking cane carved with his own name, became a kind of universal child. Everyone's son, everyone's prince, everyone's premature death. But the woman who carried him for 9 months, the woman who held him as an infant in some Amarna nursery before he became Tutankhaten and later Tutankhamun, that woman has no name on any wall, no name on any coffin, no name in any king list. For a century after Howard Carter unsealed the antechamber in November of 1922, Egyptologists argued about her in books and conferences and footnotes. Nefertiti, some said. Kia, said others. A minor wife, a forgotten sister, a ghost in the family tree. In February of 2010, the Journal of the American Medical Association published a paper that did something the inscriptions never had. It named the relationship, not the woman herself. Her personal name remains absent, but the line of blood she came from. And the line of blood she came from rewrites who Tutankhamun's mother could possibly have been. She was his father's full biological sister. To understand what that sentence means, you have to go back to the late 18th dynasty, to the years around 3036 BCE, when the boy who would become Tutankhamun was born into a court that had just torn itself apart. His grandfather, Amenhotep III, had ruled for nearly 40 years over an Egypt at the height of its imperial power. Gold flowing in from Nubia, tribute from Syria, temples rising at Karnak and Luxor and Soleb. His grandmother, Queen Taya, was a commoner-born noblewoman who had been elevated to great royal wife, and who would, in time, be remembered as one of the most powerful women the dynasty produced. Their son Akhenaten, born Amenhotep IV, inherited that throne and then did something no pharaoh had done before. He abandoned the old gods. He moved the capital out of Thebes into the desert, into a brand new city he carved from limestone cliffs and named Akhetaten, the horizon of the sun disk. He elevated the Aten, the visible disk of the sun, above Amun, above Osiris, above the entire pantheon. His great royal wife was Nefertiti, whose painted bust would, 3,000 years later, become almost as famous as Tutankhamun's mask itself. This was the world Tutankhamun was born into. Heat off the limestone in the new city, wind through colonnaded courts open to the sky, hymns to a god with no face, only rays ending in small human hands. And somewhere in that household, in some chamber whose walls have long since collapsed back into desert, there was a woman who gave birth to him and whose identity the court chose not to record. The mystery had been there from the beginning. Tutankhamun's tomb, KV62, contained inscriptions naming his wife Ankhesenamun, naming his grandparents Amenhotep III and Taye, naming the Aten and naming Amun, even naming a lock of hair belonging to Queen Taye placed inside a nested set of miniature coffins. But no inscription named his mother. None of the funerary equipment, none of the shrine texts, none of the wall paintings identified the woman who bore him. For a king whose every meal, every ritual, every ceremonial sandal was catalogued, that absence is the loudest silence in the Valley of the Kings. Theories accumulated. Some scholars argued the mother was Kia, a secondary wife of Akhenaten, known from a handful of inscriptions. Others argued for Nefertiti, despite the fact that her 6 known daughters were all named, and Tutankhamun was not among them. Still others proposed an unnamed sister wife, a princess of the royal house used for a strategic union, and then erased. The argument stretched across 100 years of Egyptology, fought in hieroglyphs and stylistic comparisons, fought without resolution because the inscriptions themselves refused to speak. To break that silence, the question had to leave the realm of inscription entirely. It had to move into bone. The decisive sample had actually been waiting in a side chamber since 1898. That was the year a French Egyptologist named Victor Loret, working in the Valley of the Kings, opened the tomb of Amenhotep II, KV 35. Inside, in a sealed annex off the main burial chamber, Lorette found a cache of mummies. Royal mummies. The ancient priests of the 21st dynasty worried about tomb robbery had quietly relocated bodies from across the valley and tucked them into hiding. 3 of those mummies lay on the floor of the side chamber unwrapped, identities unmarked. Lorette catalogued them simply: an older woman, a younger woman, and a young boy. The younger lady, designated in the literature as KV35YL, lay on her back, mouth open, left arm bent across her chest, in a posture some Egyptologists associated with queenly burial. A wound to her face, possibly inflicted before death, possibly after. She had no coffin in the side chamber, no inscriptions, no name. For more than a century, she was a body without a story, photographed and measured, and then left where she lay. In the late 2000s, an interdisciplinary team began an ancient DNA project on the 18th dynasty royal mummies. The work was led by Zahi Hawass, then Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities. Yehia Gad of Cairo University ran the molecular analysis. Albert Zink from the Urach Institute for Mummy Studies in Bolzano joined the team along with Karsten Pusch from the University of Tübingen. Both of them experienced in extracting genetic material from severely degraded ancient remains. 2 cleanroom laboratories were built, one inside the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, one at the Faculty of Medicine in Cairo University. Mummies that had not moved in decades were transported by climate-controlled vehicle to be sampled. Inside the lab, the procedure was deliberate to the point of slowness. Bone samples taken from the inner femur, where contamination from handling was least likely. Surface layers removed, powdered material treated to release DNA from the calcium matrix. Every sample run in duplicate, sometimes triplicate, in separate facilities. Short tandem repeat markers across the genome. Y chromosome markers for the male line. Mitochondrial DNA, the maternal line marker that passes only from mother to child, for everyone. The mitochondrial result for the younger lady was haplogroup K. Tutankhamun, when his profile came back, carried the same mitochondrial lineage. That alone was not proof. Haplogroup K is shared by millions of living people. But combined with the autosomal short tandem repeat profile, the match was specific. The team published the conclusion in JAMA in February of 2010. The younger lady was the mother of Tutankhamun. Then came the second finding, which is the one that reshapes the family entirely. The mummy from tomb KV55, a damaged male skeleton, long debated as possibly Akhenaten, shared a parent-child relationship with Tutankhamun on the paternal side. And the same KV55 male shared, with the younger lady, the same set of parents. Same father, same mother, full siblings. Both of them children of Amenhotep III and Queen Tiye. The Y chromosome lineage that came out of the analysis was reported by the Hawass team and follow-up studies as belonging to haplogroup R1b, a result that surprised some specialists because R1b is now most common in Western Europe, although the project leaders argued for its presence in the ancient Near East. Other researchers have disputed the assignment and proposed alternatives including E1b1 and A, and the haplogroup question remains contested in the literature. What is not seriously contested is the relationship pattern itself. The numbers from the short tandem repeats, run through standard kinship calculation, point to brother-sister parents for Tutankhamun. The boy king was the product of a sibling marriage at the center of the royal house. This is the moment the story stops being about Egyptology and becomes about people. Brother-sister marriage was not unknown in dynastic Egypt. The pharaoh was understood as a living god, and divine blood was thought to be preserved by keeping the royal line married within itself. But the genetic cost of that doctrine, paid in body after body, is something the bones now allow us to read. Tutankhamun himself, CT scanned and sampled across the same project, showed a left foot turned inward. By a condition consistent with clubfoot, partial necrosis of bone in that foot suggestive of Köhler disease, scoliosis of the upper spine, and a partial cleft of the palate. He walked with canes. More than 130 were found in his tomb. Some have wear patterns. He used them. The mechanism is straightforward genetics. When two people who share half their genome have a child together, the chances rise that the child will inherit the same harmful recessive variant from both sides. Across a dynasty that practiced this for generations, Amenhotep III had himself married a daughter. In addition to Ta, the genetic bottleneck tightens. The variants accumulate. The bodies start to show it. So who was she? The younger lady, the unnamed mother. A daughter of Amenhotep III and Queen Taye, a sister of the man buried in KV 55, a princess by birth. But here, the title of this script gets complicated, and the honest answer requires saying the complication out loud. She was not non-royal in the sense of lacking royal blood. She had as much royal blood as anyone in Egypt at that moment. What she was not, as far as we can tell, was the official great royal wife. She does not appear to be Nefertiti in the durable consensus, although a small group of researchers, most prominently a 2018 hypothesis from a separate team, has argued for that identification, and continues to do so. She does not appear to be Kia in most readings. She appears instead to be a sister of Akhenaten, whose name was not preserved in the surviving inscriptions. Some Egyptologists have proposed Nebeta. Some have proposed Bekhetaten. Most have left the slot open. Not the queen of the records. The sister of the record's silence. Not a woman whose face was painted on every shrine wall. A woman whose existence the court chose not to broadcast. Not a non-royal in blood. A non-queen in title. The most famous boy in the ancient world was born from a relationship the court did not want to name and a woman the court did not want to remember. This is where the limits of DNA become honest. Genetic analysis can tell you that a mother existed, that she carried a certain mitochondrial lineage, that her parents were specific named pharaohs. It cannot tell you what she was called by her mother. It cannot tell you whether she chose her brother or was given to him. It cannot tell you whether she held the infant Tutankhamun in a sunlit court at Amarna and whispered something we will never recover. It cannot tell you why she ended up unwrapped on the floor of a side chamber in someone else's tomb with a wound on her face. The bone gives relationship. The inscription would have given identity. The inscription is not there. There is the skeptic balance to hold, and it deserves to be held carefully. Ancient DNA from Egyptian mummies is some of the most difficult in the world to work with. The heat of the desert degrades the molecule. The natron used in mummification damages it further. Contamination from 120 years of handling is a real concern. Some specialists have argued that the Hawass team's results need replication in independent labs with more stringent contamination controls before the kinship conclusions are treated as settled. Others have pushed back, noting the multiple laboratory protocol the team used and the consistency of the short tandem repeat profiles across runs. The debate continues in journals. The most cautious reading is that the mother-child relationship between the younger lady and Tutankhamun is well supported. The exact name to attach to that mother remains unsettled, and probably always will. Picture the boy, 8 years old, 9. Walking through a courtyard in Amarna, already too warm in the morning sun, a small ceremonial cane in his hand, his foot turning slightly inward in the dust. A nurse beside him. Sometime not long after, his father gone, the city beginning to empty, the boy moved to Memphis and renamed and given a throne and a religion to restore. He carried his childhood into the tomb with him. Gloves sized for small hands, a chair he had used as a boy, a chest with toys, a lock of his grandmother's hair. Whatever his mother had given him, whatever object had carried her presence, sits somewhere in those 80 cubic meters of catalogued grave goods unrecognized, because we don't know the name to look for on the label. Reframe the picture. The boy on the gold mask is not just the boy on the gold mask. He is the son of 2 siblings, the grandson of a pharaoh, who married a commoner who became one of the great queens of the dynasty, the great-grandson of a court that had begun consolidating its blood in ways that the body of the boy himself records. The face is famous. The lineage is small, tight, recursive, narrowing toward the figure on the throne who would not live to see 20. The mask is beautiful. The arithmetic underneath it is sadder than the mask lets on. In the Valley of the Kings, the dust still moves. The tomb, KV62, sits where Carter found it, smaller than the kings around it, hurriedly painted on walls that were never meant for a pharaoh. Up the wadi, KV35 still holds its side chamber, where Lorette stood in 1898 with a candle. The younger lady is no longer there. She rests now in the Cairo Museum, under climate control, under a name that is not her name. The gold mask is in another case. The small sandals, sewn for a foot that never grew into them, are in another. The chariot wreckage from his hunting accidents, if accidents they were, is in another. The unguent jars, drained centuries ago by tomb, robbers and then resealed by priests, are in another. Somewhere in the silence between those cases, in a slot the inscriptions never filled, a woman stands holding a child. We have her blood. We have her son. We do not have her name. And the mask, the canes, the small gloves, the dust of the valley moving across the stones at dusk. They are all we have left of the conversation she was not allowed to leave behind.